I just wanted to quickly talk about unreliable remote events. Saw a video on this, and I don't think it was pretty clear that the video author talked about really what unreliable remote events are for. So if you go look at the Creator Hub docs yourself, you'll see that it says that an unreliable remote event object is a variant of the remote event, and it facilitates asynchronous, unordered, and unreliable one-way communication. That's a lot of words. What does it mean? So basically, what it's saying is that, like the remote event, it facilitates one-way communication. So telling something to happen on the client or the server, and it's one way. You don't ask and get something back like a remote function. Um, but what does this asynchronous, unordered, and unreliable mean? Oh, well, no. Asynchronous is part of remote event, but what does the unordered and unreliable mean? Well, in the name of unreliable remote event, you might think, whoa, this doesn't get called, or whoa, is this just randomly getting dropped? No. Let's take a look at a quick example here. So say that this is the queue for any events that get fired. So remote event fired. And as we fire more remote events, this queue starts to fill up, right? This is how the new remote event system works, is this queue starts to fill up. And as we receive these and we perform an action on it, like our connection, and I'll set this color to purple. As the events get fired, we start cleaning them up from the queue, right? But if this queue fills up and the player's not ready, or the client doesn't have the event connected yet, it's not going to do anything. The queue is just going to keep filling, and it's going to keep filling, and eventually you're going to fill it, and it's going to be larger than the queue. And that's when you'll get that error that says remote event queue exhausted. Did you forget to connect it, right? The way unreliable remote events work is they don't use this queue. They just fire straight to the client, and this is the unreliables over here. It just fires straight to the client, and if the client has a connection for it, it'll perform that connection. However, if the client doesn't have a connection for it, it'll just drop that event. And so similarly, when our remote events start to overflow outside of the queue up here, the system is also going to drop these normal remote events, not the unreliables. So the way the unreliables work is that they're unordered and they're unreliable. The unordered basically means that whenever it comes in, it's going to call it, no matter what. Even if one might take a little bit of delay more than the other, whenever it comes in, it's going to fire it. Whereas now, one remote comes in and it fires. One remote comes in and it fires. And they come in an order and they come in a queue. But with the unreliable remote events, it comes in and either it deals with it then. If it's not connected, it passes through. If it's connected, we perform the action. And that's what the purple means here. And the unreliable basically means that if we don't have a connection for it, it's not going to wait in the queue for us to give it a connection. It's just going to sit there. And if we don't have anything for it, it's just going to go right through and nothing's going to happen. So if we look at the documentation here, um, it recommends that you use these for ephemeral events. These are things like a visual effect or picking up a coin. Not picking up a coin, a visual effect, a sound effect, the replication of something, maybe a step in replication. And this is something where, as we're continuously firing the event, or if it gets fired a lot, maybe if you lose the data or if the data gets overwritten, then that's where you want to use the unreliable. Because here in this case, what has to happen is that each remote event has to get processed, right? Whereas over here, as we get it in, they're processing no matter what the order is. It's just flowing right through. So say for something like replicating a custom character to the client, that's where we're going to want to use this unreliable remote event. You can see here what I just described is in the docs saying these events are not resent if they're lost. That means if in communication for some reason ROBLOX fails to send it properly, it's not going to resend. That's the unreliable part. And they don't wait for previous events to arrive before being processed, which is what I talked about here, where we're not waiting, whereas over here in the queue, we're waiting for them to arrive and be processed, right? And this could potentially have reduced latency and reduced network traffic, especially if you're firing these under a lot of load. So, like I said earlier with the custom character, say that you're sending this replication every like millisecond or maybe even less than that. That's a lot of times that you're sending the data through, and maybe some of those get dropped. And if you use a regular event, you're going to see those updates every millisecond, and it's going to wait for each one of those updates. Whereas here with the unreliables, if we keep sending it through, it's just going to use the new data. So, how does this affect your code? What do we want to do? Basically, this really shouldn't affect you much. If you have something like a sound or a visual effect that it's okay if the client doesn't always have it, maybe that could be an unreliable remote event. But for most cases, still using remote events is entirely normal and entirely useful, because for most cases with a remote event, you're asking the server to perform an action or you're telling the client to do a specific action. And it's something that you don't want to lose, and it's usually something that doesn't happen all the time, like purchasing an item or displaying some information on the screen for the client. And so using the regular remote event is nice because that's information that we want to make sure the client sees. Okay, that was a really quick discussion of unreliable remote events and how they work. If you guys like this video, drop a thumbs up, comment, subscribe. Yeah, have a good day.